seen in very clear focus, governments around the world, from Beijing to Washington, are very willing to track our data. So how much privacy will be left in our digital future?
A lot will depend on how we rein in our governments. In the democratic side, we have a voice. We can tell them that we don't think it's appropriate for them to be spying on our citizens. Google is outraged at some of the recent activities of monitoring Google services according to the Snowden documents, with presumably more disclosures to come. But the fact of the matter is that citizens have a right to privacy in democracies. Governments should not be snooping on them. In other countries, we worry that they'll use these tools to invade the privacy in ways they haven't before. For example, tracking their citizens, right? Knowing exactly what they're up to doing. It really has a chilling effect on culture.
Joining us now is Michael Ratner, President Emeritus of the Center for Constitutional Rights and the U.S. Attorney for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks.
I'm the lawyer for WikiLeaks and Julian Assange in the United States. I think we're at an amazing point in this country and in this decade about the collision between the government controlling the knowledge that the people ought to have and controlling the internet, and people who are going to expose it. And I don't know how it's going to come out. Let's just hope it comes out on the side of an open democracy and not a closed system. You know, as I say often, democracy dies behind closed doors. Let's hope we don't have that.
I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime. That is not who we are.
Well, in the past few weeks, the U.S. has witnessed an aggressive crackdown on whistleblowers. For many, the Obama administration's tough investigative stance on unauthorized press leaks goes against the president's own election promise to bring back openness and transparency. Moreover, some journalists now accuse the Obama government of actually attacking press freedom.
James Risen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning national security correspondent for the New York Times, is being told to give up his sources or go to jail.
We turn now to whistleblowers and the unprecedented attack they've come under during the Obama administration. Evoking the Espionage Act of 1917, the administration has pressed criminal charges against no fewer than 6 government employees, more than all previous presidential administrations combined.
Just days ago, the story broke that the Justice Department secretly obtained telephone records for more than 20 separate lines assigned to the Associated Press journalists and offices. The details here: the Justice Department secretly obtained 2 months' worth of records, including cellular, office, and home telephone records of individual reporters and an editor for the AP General Office, as well as numbers in Washington, New York, and Hartford, Connecticut, and the main number for AP reporters covering Congress.
On August 21st, Army Judge Colonel Denise R. Lind sentenced Private Bradley Manning to up to 35 years in prison for leaking WikiLeaks cables. 700,000 secret government files, including State Department cables, Iraq and Afghanistan incident reports, and perhaps most famously, the collateral murder video showing Apache helicopters gunning down unarmed civilians and journalists in Iraq.
Come on, fire!
Legal experts say Manning's 35-year sentence is, quote, unprecedented. And while Manning could be released on parole in as little as 7 years, the military would likely oppose an early release. It sought to imprison Manning for 60 years after he was acquitted of the most serious charges of aiding the enemy, which could have resulted in the death penalty.
I think it shows an administration that is in deep fear, deep insecurity. In some ways it's on the run because they're afraid of us. They're afraid of American citizens who are willing to raise questions in regard to their use and abuse of power.
Over the weekend, protesters in dozens of cities around the world also held rallies to mark an International Day of Action calling for Manning's release. As we shift gears and turn to the first report on press freedom in the United States ever published by the Committee to Protect Journalists, which usually advocates for press freedoms overseas, and the news isn't good. Titled The Obama Administration and the Press, the report looks at the many ways President Obama has ushered in a paralyzing climate of fear for both reporters and their sources.
In reality, there is a war against journalism and the process of transparency, and this war is with the government of the United States and its closest allies, mostly the British government. They're doing a lot of things against the freedom of press to hide this whole report, which generally the United States or English government say these things only happen in China or Iran or Russia, but now we can see that the United States government is doing these exact same things.
The new report is written by Leonard Downey, former executive editor of The Washington Post. He spoke with dozens of journalists who told him officials are, quote, reluctant to discuss even unclassified information because they fear that leak investigations and government surveillance make it more difficult for reporters to protect them as sources.
But I was surprised by the pervasiveness of this administration's control over information, by how much it discourages leaks of all kinds and not just classified information leaks. And how much it does not allow for unauthorized contacts with the press if it can help it, and how much it uses social media and other digital means, websites and so on, to put out a lot of its own story, a lot of its own information that makes the administration look good while restricting access to information that would hold the government accountable for its actions.
But what most of the media isn't telling you is that this president has gone after whistleblowers and leaks at an unprecedented rate. The New York Times reporting that President Obama has sought prosecution of whistleblowers more than every other president in history combined.
The document shows for the first time that under the Obama administration, the communication records of millions of U.S. citizens are being collected indiscriminately and in bulk, regardless of whether they are suspected of any wrongdoing. The order, a copy of which has been obtained by The Guardian, requires Verizon on an ongoing daily basis to give the NSA information on all telephone calls in its systems, both within the U.S. and between the U.S. and other countries. The Secret Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court granted the order to the FBI on April 25th, giving the government unlimited authority to obtain the data for a specified 3-month period on July 19th.
Earlier, I had the chance to conduct the first TV interview with the reporter who broke this story wide open, Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian.
The government is still engaged in what until 10 years ago was considered unthinkable types of surveillance, a massive surveillance net over all people. And the problem is that this is all kept so completely secret. Why was this court order that we obtained marked top secret and closely guarded? It doesn't harm national security for us to know about it. We should have this debate in the open. Let the Obama administration talk about why they're collecting these records, whether it's part of a larger program, and then let's debate whether we as a society want to live with a government that knows everything that we're doing, regardless of whether we've done anything wrong. What this court order does that makes it so striking is that it's not directed at any individuals who they believe or have suspicion or committing crimes or part of a terrorist organization. It's collecting the phone records of every single customer of Verizon Business and finding out every single call that they've made internationally and locally. So it's indiscriminate and it's sweeping. It's a government program designed to collect information about all Americans, not just people where they believe there's reason to think they've done anything wrong.
I mean, I think people need to conceptually see this as they're creating a library, right? They don't read every book that's in the library. They just collect them all. And they basically wait until someday that they go back and decide, I want to read that book.
What that does is it gets data from the service providers, like a Verizon, in bulk. And basically, you have call pairs. You have my telephone number connecting with your telephone number. There are no names. There's no content in that database. All it is the number pairs, when those calls took place, how long they took place. At no point is any content revealed because there's no content in the database.
So I hear you saying I have no problem with what NSA has been doing.
Well, let me finish, because I don't. So what happens then is that the FBI, if in fact it now wants to get content, if in fact it wants to start tapping that phone, it's got to go to the FISA court with probable cause and ask for a warrant.
And this program is a program in which the NSA takes its hands and sticks it directly into the servers of all of these internet giants, Facebook, Google, Skype, Apple, YouTube, that people around the world use to have communications, and lets the NSA grab whatever it is they want, either stored emails or real-time communication, with nobody looking over their shoulder, nobody watching what they're doing. Any analyst in the NSA sitting at a keyboard can at any moment go into the system and listen to whatever he wants, read whatever he wants, and then store it. It is extremely menacing, and there are no checks. This is how the world communicates, and the NSA is monitoring it at all times.
From The Guardian on Wednesday night, it's Verizon. The Wall Street Journal today says it's also AT&T and Sprint and unnamed internet service providers and credit card companies. Then from The Guardian and The Washington Post, we get details of the PRISM program, sweeping up vast amounts of internet everything. Your emails, your videos, your photos, your chats. From most of the big famous internet companies, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, Facebook, AOL, Skype, YouTube, Apple. Here's the thing, though. This is the question of the day. The companies are all basically denying it.
Greenwald is breaking another story tonight in The Guardian. The paper says it has obtained a copy of a presidential directive in which President Obama orders his senior national security and intelligence officials to draw up a list of potential overseas targets for U.S. cyber attacks.
I came in with a healthy skepticism about these programs. My team evaluated them. We scrubbed them thoroughly. We actually expanded some of the oversight, increased some of the safeguards. But my assessment and my team's assessment was that they help us prevent terrorist attacks. You can't have 100% security and also then have 100% privacy and zero inconvenience. We're going to have to make some choices as a society. And what I can say is that in evaluating these programs, they make a difference in our capacity to anticipate and prevent possible terrorist activity. In the abstract, you can complain about Big Brother and how this is a potential program run amok. But when you actually look at the details, then I think we've struck the right balance.
The DNI spokesman also said that a crimes report has been filed by the National Security Agency. Have you been contacted by the FBI or any federal law enforcement official yet?
No, and anytime they would like to speak to me, I'll be more than happy to speak to them, and I will tell them that there's this thing called the Constitution, in the very First Amendment of which guarantees a free press. As an American citizen, I have every right and even the obligation as a journalist to tell my fellow citizens and our readers what it is that the government is doing that they don't want people in the United States to know about, and I'm happy to talk to them at any time, and the attempt to intimidate journalists and sources with these constant threats of investigation aren't going to work.
You've described your source as a reader of yours who trusted how you would handle the material. The source has also been described as a career government official who is concerned about these programs. A former prosecutor called the source a double agent. I know you're not going to reveal the source, obviously, but what more can you tell us about the individual's motivations?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to confirm that there's only one individual. There could be one or more than one. But let me just make this point, because I think this is so critical, because every time there's a whistleblower, somebody who exposes government wrongdoing, the the tactic of the government is to try and demonize them as a traitor. They risk their careers and their lives and their liberty because what they were seeing being done in secret inside the United States government is so alarming and so pernicious that they simply want one thing, and that is for the American people at least to learn about what this massive spying apparatus is and what the capabilities are so that we can have an open, honest debate about whether that's the kind of country that we want to live in. And if people decide that they do want the government knowing everything about them, intervening in all of their communications, monitoring them, keeping dossiers on them, then so be it. But at least we should have that debate openly and democratically. Unfortunately, since the government hides virtually everything that they do with the threat of criminal prosecution, the only way for us to learn about them is through these courageous whistleblowers who deserve our praise and gratitude and not imprisonment and prosecution.
Finally, should we be expecting more revelations from you?
You should.
Okay, Glenn Greenwald, thanks very much.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
What are some of the positions that you held previously within the intelligence community?
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer.
Why should people care about surveillance?
Because even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded, and the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude to where it's getting to the point you don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call, and then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
One of the extraordinary parts about this episode is that usually whistleblowers do what they do anonymously and take steps to remain anonymous for as long as they can, which they hope often is forever. You, on the other hand, have decided to do the opposite, which is to declare yourself openly as the person behind these disclosures. Why did you choose to do that?
I think that the public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people who make these disclosures that are outside of the democratic model. When you are subverting the power of government, that's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy. And if you do that in secret consistently, you know, as the government does when it wants to benefit from a secret action that it took, it'll kind of give its officials a mandate to go, hey, you know, tell the press about this thing and that thing, so the public is on our side. But they rarely, if ever, do that when an abuse occurs. That falls to individual citizens, but they're typically maligned. You know, it becomes a thing of these people are against the country, they're against the government. But I'm not. I'm no different from anybody else. I don't have special skills. I'm just another guy who sits there day to day in the office, watches what's happening, and goes, this is something that's not our place to decide. The public needs to decide whether these programs and policies are right or wrong. And I'm willing to go on with the record to defend the authenticity of them and say, I didn't change these. I didn't modify the story. This is the truth. This is what's happening. You should decide whether we need to be doing this.
Have you given thought to what it is that the U.S. government's response to your conduct is in terms of what they might say about you, how they might try to depict you?
I think the government's going to launch an investigation. I think they're going to say I've committed grave crimes. I've violated the Espionage Act. They're going to say I've aided our enemies in making them aware of these systems. But that argument can be made against anybody who reveals information that points out mass surveillance systems, because fundamentally they apply equally to ourselves as they do to our enemies.
If your motive had been to harm the United States and help its enemies, or if your motive had been personal material gain, were there things that you could have done with these documents
to advance those goals that you didn't end up doing?
If I had just wanted to harm the U.S., you know, that you could shut down the surveillance system in an afternoon. But that's not my intention. And I think for anyone making that argument, they need to think, if they were in my position, and you know, you live a privileged life, you're living in Hawaii in paradise and making a ton of money, what would it take to make you leave everything behind? The greatest fear that I have regarding the outcome for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of these disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society. But they won't be willing to take the risks necessarily to stand up and fight to change things, to force their representatives to actually take a stand in their interests. And the months ahead, the years ahead, it's only going to get worse until eventually there will be a time where policies will change, because the only thing that restricts the activities of the surveillance state are policy. Even our agreements with other sovereign governments, we consider that to be a stipulation of policy rather than a stipulation of law. And because of that, a new leader will be elected. They'll flip the switch, say that because of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, you know, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
And now you've got this 29-year-old high school dropout whistleblower making foreign policy for our country, our security policy. And the guy, look, I think it's sad, Brian, we've made treason cool. Betraying your country is kind of a fashion statement. He wants to be the national security Kim Kardashian. He cites Bradley Manning as a hero. I mean, we need to get very, very serious about treason. And oh, by the way, for treason, as in the case of Bradley Manning or Edward Snowden, you bring back the death penalty.
I know he damaged the country, and the Obama administration will deal with it.
But do you think it's possible for one man to really damage the security of the nation?
I think he damaged the security of the country. I put the program in place to protect the country, and one of the certainties is civil liberties were guaranteed.
No, I don't think Mr. Snowden was a patriot. If, in fact, he believes that what he did was right, then, like every American citizen, he can come here, appear before the court with a lawyer, and make his case.
Over the weekend, the Director of National Intelligence, the intelligence chair, is on This Week yesterday, making clear just how serious this leak is.
If Snowden did what he says he has done here, top officials view him not as a hero, but as a criminal. You can expect them to seek extradition. You can expect them to fully prosecute this. Right now, the Justice Department saying only that they've opened an investigation, but they view this with utmost seriousness.
We begin tonight with breaking news. The Washington Post reports that this evening, the U.S. officials have charged NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden with espionage.
You know, what we know is that we're following all the appropriate legal channels and working with various other countries to make sure that rule of law is observed.
Well, on the run, admitted NSA leaker Edward Snowden is fighting for freedom, flying from country to country in an attempt to avoid extradition to the U.S. On Saturday night, word came that the 30-year-old had boarded a plane headed toward Moscow with plans to quickly leave for a third unknown destination. His current whereabouts are unknown, as is his final destination.
We are just not buying that this was a technical decision by a Hong Kong immigration official. This was a deliberate choice by the government to release a fugitive despite a valid arrest warrant, and that decision unquestionably has a negative impact on the U.S.-China relationship.
The New York Times reports Snowden, stuck in Russia still, has applied for asylum in 21 countries. 8 have turned him down. The Wall Street Journal reporting Austria, Finland, India, Ireland, Norway, Poland, and Spain have all denied Snowden's applications. And Tuesday morning, Huffington Post tweeted, Brazil rejects Edward Snowden's asylum request. He's still waiting to hear back from Bolivia, China, Cuba, France, Germany, Iceland, Italy, the Netherlands, Nicaragua, Switzerland, and Venezuela.
Snowden was hiding out in the transit zone of Moscow airport for more than a month before Russia granted him asylum for 1 year.
Well, this move certainly strains relations between the U.S. and Russia because, of course, the U.S. wanted Snowden back here in the States to face prosecution.
This photo from Russian TV is said to show NSA leaker Edward Snowden headed to a secret location, finally leaving the Moscow airport where he had been holed up in limbo for more than a month. His Russian attorney showed off Snowden's new document granting him a year of temporary asylum. Clearly, the White House is not happy.
We are extremely disappointed that the Russian government would take this step despite our very clear and lawful requests in public and in private to have Mr. Snowden expelled to the United States.
Just yesterday, there was yet another blockbuster revelation from info Snowden leaked. According to the Guardian newspaper, the NSA has a top-secret program that allows intelligence analysts to spy on, quote, nearly everything a user does on the internet in real time. House Speaker John Boehner wants pressure applied on Moscow.
And I would hope that President Obama would engage President Putin on this issue and resolve it in a way that's satisfactory to the American people.
President Obama is scheduled to attend a summit of world leaders in Russia next month, but a separate meeting between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin is now in question.
Obviously, this is not a positive development, and we have a wide range of interests with the Russians, and we are evaluating the utility of a summit.
Now, the so-called whistleblower website WikiLeaks issued a statement on Twitter thanking the Russian people for protecting Snowden. It also said, quote, "We have won the battle, now the war."
Brazil's president has called off her visit to the United States in response to Washington's refusal to take action against the NSA's surveillance practices.
Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff is demanding greater online independence for her country following allegations the NSA intercepted her personal communications, hacked a state-owned oil company, and spied on Brazilian citizens.
Now to Brazil, where the government is planning to separate itself from the U.S.-centric internet over Washington's widespread online spying. Sasha Meinrath, director of the Open Technology Institute at the New America Foundation, said, quote, "The global backlash is only beginning and will get far more severe in coming months. This notion of national privacy, sovereignty is going to be an increasingly salient issue around the globe."
The latest revelation is that the U.S. National Security Agency secretly intercepted the main communication links connecting Yahoo and Google data centers around the world. Information from millions of user accounts were accessible to the spy center.
So somewhere between California and Dublin and Hong Kong, the US state has found a way to place the biggest wiretap in history so far undiscovered. The little smiley face on the leaked document indicates at least the spies are happy. And Google too expressed unhappiness.
We are outraged at the lengths to which the government seems to have gone to intercept data from our private fiber networks, and it underscores the need for urgent reform.
Look at how much the administration has revealed now about the NSA surveillance program only because Edward Snowden provided that information to the press. The press published it, and that forced the administration to make public information about this program that Americans ought to have so that they can make decisions about it.